Now, we're about to move into our next session, but first I would like to welcome everyone who's come online for this panel discussion. A warm welcome to you all and thank you for joining us for the next 60 minutes. It is now time for me to hand over the microphone, so please welcome back to the virtual stage your facilitator for this session, the CEO of Fitness Australia, Barrie Elvish.
Thank you, Chantel, and welcome everybody to the gunfight at the OK Corral. Now, I can promise you, well, maybe I can't promise you, no bloodshed, no bodies at the end of this discussion. And just looking at that back next to me, I'm thinking, actually, quite well, those two movie stars, so maybe I've missed my calling as being the CEO of Fitness Australia. But this is the gunfight at the OK Corral, and just give you a little background to why we're having this discussion. Since starting at Fitness Australia, a common message I have received from both inside our sector and outside is, quote, you need to get rid of the cowboys. I've since learnt that depending on who's making that comment, the term cowboys covers a wide range of concepts, including individuals, businesses, training programs, and a whole range of other particular factors. COVID-19 has increased the range of people making that comment to me, and definitely the number of times that comment has been made to me. In every state that we have been negotiating COVID-safe protocols, every health department and minister that I've spoken to has asked me, what is Fitness Australia going to do if a gym or a personal trainer does not comply? Now, of course, the answer to that is we can't do much. The newly appointed Chief Allied Health Officer, the ACCC, and various health funds have all expressed to me in the past, without prompting, that the industry is not subject to regulation. They make that observation not as a positive attribute. The Fitness Australia board has been considering this situation and decided that now is the right time, I guess, to explore the appetite within the sector for the possibility of introducing some sort of regulatory framework. Last week, a private focus group operating under university research criteria, and Professor Patrick Kaiser is viewing in at the moment, started the research program. And today we begin the public consultation with a panel of 4 representing different segments of our sector. Quite diverse segments indeed. So the panellists today know the questions, but I have no idea as to what their responses may be. I've asked them to speak unscripted and to share with me and you as the viewers their frank and honest and constructive feedback. But in effect, we have a large focus group today with all the viewers who are watching this as well. And I would ask, please, if you can put comments into the chat room that we can then take back and put into consideration as we develop the survey, which will also be done under university research protocols, which will be distributed later this month to the whole sector. So let's get started. Let me introduce our panellists. Our first panellist today is Mark Stitt, who is the Director and CEO of Fit College. Mark entered the fitness industry in 1993, building his first fitness facility. He has a diverse career coming from hospitality and tourism to building and developing unique fitness businesses, RTOs, and business support initiatives. Suncoast Fitness has supplied fitness and wellness to the Sunshine Coast community for 27 years, so welcome, Mark. Cam Falloon from BodyFit Training. Cam is the founder and joint CEO of BodyFit with over 25 years experience in the industry. Cam has worked internationally as a strength and conditioning coach and high performance manager. BodyFit Training has expanded into 6 countries in 2.5 years and sold over 150 franchises globally. Fiona Kriaris from the YMCA in Victoria. Fiona is the Health and Wellness Product Manager for the YMCA in Victoria with a dedicated focus on holistic wellbeing. Her studies extend internationally from the University of California, Los Angeles at the Mindful Awareness Research Centre. She is also the Global Ambassador for the Women in Fitness Association and is inspired through the endless potential from empowering women. And our last speaker from South Australia, Tony Mennillo, founder and CEO of Better Than Ever. With over 30 years experience in the fitness industry, he's dedicated to helping everyone and by motivating them to be the best version of themselves. Now we have 4 questions. We have 4 speakers and we have less than an hour. So I'm going to limit these panellists to a maximum of 3 minutes per question. If they start to go over time, and the plug will be pulled. So again, to just encourage people who may be viewing this, please put your comments into the chat room so that we have a record, not just of our panellists on the panel here today, but also you as viewers. So the first question, Regulation has different meanings for different people. What do you understand by the term regulation, and what do you think it may mean for our sector? Fiona, you're going to go first.
I am. I think this is a very complex question and can mean a lot of things. So I'd really like to provide some context that will help shape not just my answer to this question, but to preceding ones. So first of all, COVID-19 has highlighted there are problems in our industry. And we know this because the government are considering us to be a service that are just a nice to have rather than essential. In saying that, we were having problems even before COVID-19. And I say that because it's not just about the government, but the perception of many Australians. I mean, there's only 4 million people that have a gym membership. So perhaps that there's a community that also think that we're not an essential service. So what we need to do is we need to make some changes, but we need to know what those changes are. We need to be able to articulate and define what the problems are. And I think the research that Fitness Australia are conducting with La Trobe University is vital. And this is the integral part to actually get this data and fuel what the meaning will mean for our sector. In saying that, we don't know what that data is representing yet. We've got surveys going out, and I think that's really important to get a wide spread of consultation. However, if I'm to give a more surface level answer as to what this could mean for our sector, it is having policies enforced either by government or an industry body so that we have standardisation across our sector. And this is about having consistency and a minimum standard to abide by. So this is enforced. And this could be anything from safety regulations. It could be the quality of our exercise professionals. It could be COVID safe, even extending all the way to customer care. So I think regulation is about having a streamlined approach that is enforced throughout our sector.
Thanks, Fiona, and you've done very well with your timing. So, Mark, over to you from Fit College. Perhaps you can share with us what regulation actually means to you. I mean, it'd be interesting coming from the training side of this, what impact you think it may have.
Look, I agree with Fiona. I think the COVID impact has highlighted a number of issues, and none more than the disenfranchised government of this country in relation to how the states run and then the government run. You only have to look at pay grades and HR issues, and they come into a state level and a federal level, and you've got to pick one and work with one. So it makes it difficult to use the government to become a regulatory body in these sort of issues. We need to have an independent body, I think, drive this for us. But to answer your question, for me, I think accountability is key. It's one of the issues we haven't had for 30 years. We've got a lot of industry guide to code of practices out there. We've done all the research, it's all there. It may be slightly varied now due to some of the impacts that we've seen through COVID, and we're adjusting quickly to that to show the hospital systems and allied health that we are of value here. We are an essential service and we can work with you. We just lack the respect and we lack the recognition from these bodies to utilise what we can do. And that comes with that acknowledgement through regulation from a defining body that has teeth. The problem that we've had is nobody's had any teeth to now. We've been doing this for a long time. We've had these conversations for a long time. Let's stop pussyfooting around it. Let's start getting some really, defined guidelines here. And if people don't abide by it, they can't be in our industry. That's all there is to it. I do think we need to step up our education. I think it needs to be a better education, not a shorter education. We've gone from this development of our fitness professionals, and they seem to be getting less and less instead of more and more, so that we are recognised by our allied health, so we are recognised by the whole hospital system, so they can use this. But for me, the key word is accountability from a governing body that's independent, that can go across the board, across Australia, and not be shut down independently by states because we don't meet their particular criteria.
Okay, thanks very much, Mark. Cam, I'm going to come to you now to get your perspective, I guess, from a successful business builder and also with your professional background itself. I'm sure you've got some interesting comments to make, so please share them with us.
Yeah, thanks, Barry. And I mean, I agree with both Fiona and Mark and the accountability aspect. I guess simply regulation is really, it's a binding set of rules that are set out by a governing body that does set boundaries and that does dictate the way that we need to operate within an industry, whether you're a business or a sole trader, or in our instance, a franchise group. And it's a set of rules that, more importantly, keeps the stakeholders accountable to serve the best interests of the end user, which is our members and our public, which I think we'd all agree there's a level of ambiguity on that at the moment within the industry. We're largely self-regulated. And so ultimately we have to have the end user in mind. We have to make sure that our practices get to our members and our clients in a best practice way and in a safe way. And obviously COVID's really, really topical at the moment. I'll probably leave that alone for the next point. But, you know, we have the Corporations Act, so we need to abide by those sets of rules. As a franchise, we're responsible and answerable to the Franchise Code of Conduct. And so we should, as an industry, certainly be regulated and answerable to a governing body that just maintains a certain set of standards so that we know that there's a level of consistency across the board. The challenge I see for Fitness Australia or whoever that body is that the fitness industry is such a broad umbrella, and that's representative of the people on this panel. And so there's various levels that need to be met. Notwithstanding that, though, I think that there needs to be some minimum requirements to be able to say, I am a member of Fitness Australia, and broadly, these are the rules from which we must act upon to be a member. And should we step outside of those, Fitness Australia should have the power to implement some sort of change, whether that be deregistration or other, to really increase the standards of the industry and to, I guess, rule out the lowest common denominator, because it's always the lowest common denominator that tends to get the loudest voice and end up in the papers and damages the industry.
Yeah, that's definitely true, Cam. In fact, I was, as you know, in Victoria, it's very confusing at the moment. Lots of different messages coming out from various agencies and media and that sort of gear. And I was listening to a podcast on Wednesday, and the person who was being interviewed is a gym owner in Victoria, and they made the comment that, well, you know, of course, that we are self-regulating and we don't have a governing body. And it was sort of put as almost a positive attribute. And I thought, I just wonder if you realise implications of what you're saying to a viewer, to a person who is listening, to actually understand what that means. Tony, can you tell us what your views may be as to what you think regulation might mean, and what do you understand by the term of it, and what might it mean for our sector?
Well, Barry, I agree with all the panellists. I mean, at the end of the day, we need to bridge the gap between government, what we do in the fitness industry, and the end user, as Cam mentioned, the consumer being the client or the person. As Fiona mentioned, only 4 million people who actually exercise that go to a gym. So then there's another, 20 odd million, they're not doing anything. And they're generally the first ones that are going to think, okay, I need to go and see someone. Who should I go and see? Now, the biggest problem I've had in all the years that I've been in the industry is we're pretty much the only industry that doesn't have some sort of regulation. I mean, you can't practice as a lawyer without being registered with a governing body that keeps a control over what you can and can't do. Same with being in the medical industry and any other industry. I don't understand how maybe our industry grew so quickly that it just got out of hand. Whatever the reasons are, I'm so glad that we're finally coming together as a group and tidying it all up, because we need to, and we're not going to fix it up tomorrow. It might take many years, but if we can get this conversation going, which is what we're doing now, and just get those steps in place, get the rules in place, and just professionalize what we do. I mean, just from my own personal perspective, I decided to go and do a sports science degree. It took me 3-4 years. I then did further study at another university, and I kept continuing my education. I'm a proud member of Fitness Australia. I've been a member for many, many years. I continuously get my continuous education credits. But the thing is, I'm no different than anyone else that can just do a course tomorrow, finish their course, in a few months' time, and then within a year, they're charging the same rates that I'm charging. I've got no control out of that. And now with the whole COVID situation, it's compounding it, because now there's more people moving to the online market, which is not regulated at all. Or if it is, it's regulated minimally. and you've got, you know, celebrities and people that just want to, you know, as we call them, Insta trainers. And our industry, if we don't do something about it now, is going to quickly drop straight off. And, you know, people like me running a boutique personal training studio that wants to offer a personalized service, a professional service, it's just going to be, you mentioned the 30% of businesses, Tom mentioned it this morning in his keynote presentation, 30% of businesses are going to fail in the next 12 months. And if we don't do something about regulating it pretty quickly, I think that number's going to go up even higher.
Yeah, okay. So thanks, Tony. And I mean, as we're all trying to get our members back and encourage new members to come into our facilities, I think from my point of view, if we can introduce some sort of regulatory framework, it will give increased confidence to a whole range of potential markets we don't currently tap into. So the second question I'm going to ask you now is, and to some degree you may have already covered this, but this gives you a chance to elaborate a little bit. Can you identify any positive impacts regulation would have from your perspective on the fitness industry? So what are the advantages? And we know it's going to be difficult bringing it in. We know that it's, as Mark said, this has been tried in the past and it was too hard, whatever. Interestingly, I've had some investigations with URSA to see if there's any other countries done this, so we're not reinventing the wheel. No country has done it. So we are actually in very virgin territory here, which to me indicates two things. We're either on a fool's journey, or we have to step up to the mark to actually show what can be achieved. But I'll get off my soapbox there now and let you guys have a say. So what do you think of some of the positive impacts regulation would have? And Mark, you're first this time round.
Hey, there is one country that's done it recently, and that's South Africa.
Right,
but it was an absolute minefield there. You're talking about sheds and backstreet type things. It was a disaster. So they had to step in because it really was volatile and dangerous. But they have done it, and they're achieving some really, you know, great gains. But look, I liked your comment that you said increased confidence from other industries in us, so that they believe in the fact that we have the science behind us, and we have the education, and we're delivering a product that is sound. I think a lot of people look from the outside into this industry and they believe it's for a special type of person, and that interpretation has changed drastically since, you know, I first started training in fitness facilities in the late 70s and early 80s. It's changed drastically, but it still has that perception. So what we need to do is increase the confidence into the marketplace, and we can only do that if they believe that we have a standard, and the standard comes with regulation. And when I alluded to the fact that we've done all this before, don't get me wrong, I don't think this is something that we shouldn't pursue. I think we should pursue this more aggressively than we ever have right now, because right now is the opportunity. Globally, people are recognizing that our industry can help in times like now with pandemics, whether it be physically, mentally, emotionally, through bringing families together. We have so much to offer, but we've got to get the recognition once again from these governing bodies and from the allied health and from the fringe businesses that work within us, so that we can get out into this marketplace and do this properly. And once again, it comes down to having the teeth. And if you do some research on South Africa, the great thing in South Africa is their policy and procedures aren't fantastic around what they've developed, but what they have is teeth. So if they walk into your facility and you aren't abiding by these guidelines for safety, so that there's that confidence in the marketplace, they just shut you down until you do. And I know that sounds harsh, but until we show the general public and the businesses that want to work with us, and the businesses that more particularly that we want to work with, that we're going to take this seriously, and that anybody in our space takes it seriously and abides by these code of conducts that are governed, then until that time, we're still going to be seen as the cowboys of the industry. And, you know, I guess the thing for me is Allied Health were allowed to operate here in Queensland for the first 4 or 5 weeks of the lockdown up here, when I had to shut my fitness facilities down. If we had a greater recognition through regulation, we would have been allowed to operate too. So I guess that's my point.
Thanks, Mark. Cam, over to you.
Yeah, I agree with Mark's sentiments, and I think there's a few things that absolutely brings credibility to the industry. And for all of the reasons Mark's talked about when you're engaging external stakeholders, or in recent times, you know, I know you've been in a lot of work, Barrie, through the COVID-19 situation with the federal government and all the different state governments trying to get gyms reopened and trying to set policies. And I think a more united and slightly more regulated industry allows the governing body to have much more credibility and therefore a louder voice. What it does is also, as I said earlier, it provides a level of protection, one, for all of the members of the industry, because those who are not willing to abide by the regulations and are held to account get eradicated, or they have to change their practices to come in line, which is a good thing. But more than anything, it provides a level of protection for the consumer, that they come into a facility or engage with a fitness professional with confidence. You know, you alluded to my high performance background. I think that's one of the things that there was a real collegiate type of attitude, I guess, when you talk to high performance managers in sport, because we are all highly regulated, and we all have to abide by a set code of conduct and a certain set of rules. And you know, in my previous positions, that was being tested by WADA and ASADA for using drugs as an example, and I'm just a coach. So I think I really don't see any negative downside. I think the question is about the positive impacts, and I think there are immeasurable positive impacts as an industry. And I think more than anything, it's just the level of credibility and the protection that it provides the members, but also the consumer.
Look, thanks, Cam. And the credibility is a crucial issue, because when I go and speak to various people that should know better, and some of the comments they make about our sector are not only misguided and incorrect, but they are very damaging to our credibility, to be quite honest. And I guess in many ways, the comments that the Chief Health Officer made in Victoria last weekend about gyms being high risk and causing infection, for goodness sake, even though he then turned around and acknowledged the next day that there hadn't been any transmissions in Australia, he's then saying that it's happened overseas. So this is the credibility problem we have when we go to these people to argue our case. And you've all indicated this, the COVID has created a crisis for us, but out of that crisis comes opportunity. Tony, please share your views with us.
Well, I agree with Cam and Mark. I mean, at the end of the day, we need to raise our standard. In order to increase our credibility, we need to raise our standard. Now, obviously, the students coming out of the courses, they've been educated. They need that continuous education. And if we're regulated, it enforces that continuous education. So that way they don't fall off and start going onto YouTube and other forms of social media to get the information that they need in order to survive in this industry. As we know, we've got a huge drop-off rate of young trainers that come into the industry for the right reasons, and then they leave because they're not being supported. Now, we've got a great governing body now, Fitness Australia, and I think we can all agree that, you know, yourself, Barrie, and your team are leading the group better than I've ever seen it in all the years that I've been a member of Fitness Australia. So I think we've got a strong front. Now we need to get together as a group, both educators, personal trainers, gym owners, whoever it is within the fitness industry, and work together and start rolling that boat in the right direction. So there is no way that we should not be regulated. I mean, it must be mandatory. I think that's the only way we're going to increase our professionalism. And I think it's the only way that we're going to get the respect from the allied health industry and governments and other sectors.
Okay, thanks, Tony. Fiona.
I'm going to use one word to describe all of this, and then its definition. And the word is integrity. And there's two parts to this definition. The first one is the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles. And that's something you've all spoken about already. But this is what's going to keep our industry honest, is by having industry regulation, so that we can eradicate those that aren't willing to do the work and have that minimum quality and standard, and so that we can thrive as an industry through this regulation. The second part of this definition of integrity is the state of being whole and undivided, which you've all touched on anyway. And it is about this unity and bringing us all together, knowing that we have the same expectations and a shared vision. We all want Australians to be healthy, physically, emotionally, and mentally and socially. And so by having this unity, we were able to have this one voice. And we've already seen this with Fitness Australia and the advocacy work during COVID-19. And who else is going to do that for us? As sole operators, we won't get the same traction. And so if this is what we can do now, imagine what we can do with this unity and build on that when we are regulated, or if we are regulated. And this is going to impact 3 key areas. And the first one is our government to be able to be considered a priority. The other one is customers, the ones that we're currently serving, and that's going to mean that we'll have increased retention through these high quality standards, and also acquisition. We know that there's still people not attending our facilities. And then the third part is this shared vision. So this deeper impact through our collective purpose, and that's through greater wellbeing. We can go to the next question.
I think that's a good idea. You take the lead, Fiona.
Yeah, no worries. So this is about the potential negative impact that regulation could have on our sector. And we're going to start off with Cam.
Thanks, Fiona. Yeah, I mean, broadly, I can't see any negative impact, to be quite honest. I guess the caveat that I will put on that is that we need a one united and independent governing body. So that's the only caveat I put on that. You know, I'm really strong that everyone in the industry, it's mandatory that we should be registered. You know, we talked about our industry being somewhat self-regulated, and that people are talking about that as a positive thing, and it just is not a positive thing. And I don't think anyone on this panel and those who've been in the industry a long time would argue that. I think that the regulation, as long as things like, and we tend to, I guess, in the fitness industry, focus on the education and the CECs and those sorts of things, and there's a lot more to regulation than just that. But I think we need to be careful where previously things like CECs, and I'm sure Mark's got more insight than me on this, but they've been more used as a selling tool and for commercial gain, not necessarily to regulate the industry to get best outcomes, which is for our members and our consumers. And so I don't see any negative implications. But as I say, there is a caveat on that, and that is that one, there is a one united governing body, and two, that it is mandated.
Can you hear me again now, folks?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know what's happening at this end. One of the things I did say to the board when they first started talking about doing this was just be careful what you wish for. Because if we go down this path, it has to be something which has got some rigour, and to use your word, Fiona, integrity behind it. If it's seen as some Mickey Mouse rubber stamp or something, it'll have no credibility, and I think it will actually do more harm than good. So we need to be going into this with our eyes very and truly open and having a very good understanding of the implications, because there may be some short-term pain for many of the sectors of the many segments of the sector before we get it right. So Tony, Fiona, you are, no, wait a minute.
Yep.
Tony.
The only negative thing I can see is for those that don't want to follow the rules and regulations. So I always say to people that come to me, you know, that want to be trainers, I say, do you want a job or do you want a career? If you want a job and you want to get the quick cash grab, then there's ways of doing that within the industry. And we've seen people that have done that in the industry. For someone like myself and the people that I employ, I want them to have a career. So I'm relying on the education, and then I'm happy to mentor them to work them through a career that they can be proud of, that they can change people's lives in. That's what we're looking for in order to raise those standards. So the ones that don't care about that only care about themselves and don't even care about the clients, they're the ones that are going to say, look, I don't care. I want to do what I want to do. I believe that, and you're going to get a bit of this with the anecdotal evidence when you get some people that have you know, let's choose weight loss as our example. They've lost a lot of weight. They post a photo on social media, and all of a sudden they're deemed to be the expert in losing weight. And so they recruit so many people, and people are asking them, look, how did you do that? Can I know what your eating program is? Can I know what your training program is? There's no, the regulation's not there. And let's be honest, there's still going to be a lot of area that there's not going to be any regulation from that point of view. And there's nothing we're ever going to do about it. But there's going to be a group of people like ourselves, and I believe the people that are listening to this, that are passionate enough about this industry and passionate enough about their career and the clients that they train and the employees that they have, that they want to raise their own standards. And being a credible business and personal trainer or fitness professional is going to allow them to do that. So the only negative I see is the people that don't want to abide by the rules. And you're going to get that with road rules, you're going to get that in any industry, and there's not going to be no difference here.
Okay, thanks, Tony. Fiona.
I've come up with 4 potential negative impacts under consideration. The first one is by having regulation, there's a blanket approach, and this could mean that it will favour some operators and not others. So for example, small operators may not have the resources to be able to meet those standards. So it's just something to think of. And if it's not evidence-based, and if it's not done properly, like you mentioned, Barrie, consultation or the implementation of the measures in place, it could create an us and them, this division. So we're not having buy-in. It's not so you can please everyone, but at least getting buy-in from the sector. And if we're having division, then that just defeats the purpose. The other one is if we're having decisions made from a centralised point, then perhaps it could mean that we're less agile as a sector. So we've got to make sure that even through regulation that we're able to make changes, knowing that we're in a modern and fast-paced world. And the last one is the cost. I mean, this is going to require a lot of resources, time and effort, and it's just being able to measure whether that will be offset by the benefit, and careful in whether operators will pass on costs also to consumers, because we don't want to create barriers to participation. And my last one is a consideration that I thought no one else in the world had done it, but I'm corrected, Mark, which means that it just means that we don't have a case study to go off, and doesn't mean we shouldn't do it, but it's just something to think about.
Thanks, Fiona. And it's interesting, when I was discussing this with the board, I said your leadership, because we might lose some members who don't want to be subject to, and I'm not even assuming that Fitness Australia would be the regulating body, but if that was the case, we might lose some members who don't want to be, I guess, governed or put under some sort of regulation. The flip side of that, of course, is we might get other businesses joining because they exactly want that to have that credibility. So, Mark.
Okay, so I don't see a lot of negative implications. What I do see is that we're going to get pushed back from the opportunists and the sharks that have swum in the pool with us for many years and used this industry to make a lot of money without giving anything back, and using a lot of mum and dad businesses just to get themselves wealthy and then moving on. I think that's going to be our biggest issue, is the pushback from these opportunists, the ones that really don't care about the industry. And I know, Barrie, and you and I have had this conversation many times. You need like-minded people that want to get involved in this moving forward, and people that really care about the industry and don't look at it as an opportunity to better themselves, to make more money. It's about growing an industry and the importance, I think, as Tony said, of giving people careers. Too many people come into this industry and they don't last 3 to 6 months because they don't have a career. They just come in, they get flushed out. So I think the opportunity, you're going to get a lot of pushback from these people, and there's some influential people out there that make a lot of money out of us, and they love the fact that these facilities fall over all the time, and they sell new equipment, and they tout themselves as a business consultant and all these other things. So I think that's our biggest hurdle. I love the fact, Cam, that you brought up CECs, because it's been an issue of mine for years, because we need ongoing education, and it's not happening for the right reasons, as you discussed. It's got to happen so that these people are better at what we do, so that we get the respect that we are regulated. People look at us, and once again, it's that integrity thing. So I think the issues we're going to have is the initial pushback we're going to get, but I think we can if we can work through COVID, we can work through that. And what I'd like to see, I think, is I understand, Fiona, that we may lose a lot of people, and there's a price point here. I personally think what we deliver is the race to the bottom on price point at the moment is just scaring me. You know, after COVID here in Queensland, the amount of facilities offering $10 a week memberships, like, really? Come on, guys. You know, let's go the other way. Anyway, that's a different discussion. But I agree, we've got to look at the financial aspect of this. What I would like to see, and I think how it best works, Barrie, is that we need to have a regulatory independent body that can work across Australia, but works with the federal and the state governments to get them on board. So at the end of the day, if they don't adhere to the accountabilities that are put in place, then of course we go, well, you can't be a part of this group. And that group is recognised as the industry professionals. So I think that's the way forward. I hope that makes sense. I rambled a bit, but
no, that's good, Mark. And
looks like you're up again, Fiona.
I'll be handing myself over to myself. So next, Fiona, I am next. Okay, so with this last question, it's a 3-minute. I'll go, Barrie, you're back.
I don't know how you can keep telling me, because just when you take over. That's okay. So you raise an interesting point, Mark, because if there are some people out there that are going to be opposing such a move, or for their own, whatever the reasons may be, whether it be commercial or whatever it might be, that's going to be critical that we have some key voices speaking up in support of it. Because if it's seen to be just an exercise being driven by, for example, Fitness Australia, we will be criticised for trying to, I don't know, capitalise the market, who knows what, but we're going to need very strong support coming from well-respected long-term members who can actually say, no, just as we're doing now, this is something which needs to happen. We are behind this. But anyway, so the last sort of formal question at this stage, and we'll get into a bit more sort of free thought. And when I was discussing this with, again, with the board and the Professor Kaiser, there's 2 ways we can go with this if regulation is decided to be welcome. We can go to the government and say, government, we as an industry association represent X number of businesses, X number of fitness professionals. We want to be regulated. And then, and the government basically...
Back to
Yeah.
me. So basically with this last question, it's who should regulate, how, and the timeframes involved with that. And I'm actually first up for this one, everyone. So I'll hand over to myself. With this, we're saying that if regulation was to be favourable and beneficial, then we've done our due diligence around it. It's all evidence-based. We can define the problem. We can articulate our why. I'd even love to see the risk of not doing it. I don't think we talk about that enough. I think that would really paint a picture for our industry. And then having this consultation all throughout with the how. And I know I speak about that a lot. Businesses, individuals, communities, our customers that come to our facilities, but I'd really love to see consultation and data around the customers the potential customers not attending our facilities and their perception around us, so we can really address the whole sector and whole communities. I think the implementation needs to have a targeted approach rather than a blanket approach. And I would start off at a really small scale so that you can test your measures and you can test your implementation and test the evaluation process, because then you can really fine tune things before you upscale. Because I know once you upscale, it can be really hard to detect during that point, and you really want to keep that integrity throughout. In terms of the who, I really loved, Mark, how you proposed that structure to be. And I think we really need to have a dedicated resource on this. So no voluntary people on board. This is dedicated resource, the right skill set around this, and employed just for this project alongside with Fitness Australia, and consultation from everyone within the industry. In terms of timeframe, I know that there's a level of urgency. We need to make a change. In saying that, COVID-19 has brought about a lot of emotions, and I think we have to still act with evidence-based decisions and not from an emotive state. And I would just like to add that we've got to be instilling values throughout this. And I read a really great document that the Australian government have provided on regulation, and one of the principles listed 3 words, and the first one was common sense. I feel common sense is a little subjective, so I'm going to replace that with evidence-based decisions. The second word is empathy, being able to understand the whole sector through consultation. And then the third one is respect, and Mark, you spoke of this word, and I think that we need to carry out respect for ourselves, each other, and our sector to be able to make the right changes.
Thanks, Fiona. Am I back on live now? Can
We
you
can see you now. Yeah.
To you, Barrie.
Every time Fiona wants to take over, she hits a little red button and you leave now.
Actually muting you, Barrie. You don't know it.
They've told me it might have been the backdrop that was causing the problem. So we got rid of the Cowboys. There you go. It's all solved. We can go home now. So I don't know. I'll just go back to where I was before. I'm not sure if it was covered or not, but there's 2 models you can go here. So we can go to the government and say, we have the support of the industry. We have most businesses, most exercise professionals, personal trainers on side. Government, please regulate us. And they may say, yeah, happy to do that. But they might give us a regulatory model which doesn't actually fit. It might be one they've adapted from somewhere else. And therefore, we might have a problem we don't really want. The other way of doing it is we go through a process where we develop, as you've just said, Fiona, collectively, collaboratively, based on evidence, based on respect, etc. We develop a regulatory model ourselves that then gets the buy-in and support from the industry, from businesses, from personal trainers, and then we go to the government and say, here it is, we want to do this, we want you to mandate this. And if we go, we'll have to go on a state-by-state basis, but if we get one state agreeing with us, and I think that would be quite possible given the discussions I've had, because there's an appetite on the other side for us to come up with something. If we get one state that says, yep, happy to do that, the rest will follow. That's how COAG generally seeks to work. So before I pass on to, I'm just looking at my list here. I think, Mark, you might be next, unless I've got this wrong.
Can I just, yes, thanks very much, Barrie. Just elaborating on the 2 options that you had. I think there's option 2.1, which is the direction I'd like to take, in which we come up with this framework and we come up with the ideology and how we want to work this. And then you talked about getting the stakeholders and the business owners and the industry on board. I think we need to take that one step further. I think we need to get allied health to recognise this. I think we need to get the medical fraternity to recognise this, hospitals, everybody to give recognition. We need to come up with this platform and we need to contextualise it into something that's easily accessible and that we can present in a way that shows us in the light that they want to see us. Once that's recognised, then we take it to the government and say, these allied health, these hospitals, these medicos, all these other businesses that are on these pinnacles, well, we've been down here for so long, now recognise if we were to take this framework on, they will work with this. So surely there's a scope here for us to get involved and to work with you so that we can make this law LAW law. So I think for me, that's the direction I would like to take. I'd like to see recognition from our peers in the other industries that have always been, I guess, respected because of their regulation, and to give us the nod and say, you know what, you're heading in the right direction. Good luck. We're here to help. That's what I'd like to see. Sorry, yeah. So the timeframes, that's ambiguous. I think you've got to get the right people on board first. I think you were right, Barrie. I think sorry, it was Fiona. I think that mentioned that getting the right people on board here. I think you really need to get some really seasoned bureaucrats that really know what they're doing when compiling this sort of resource and framework. And somebody, and it's going to cost money, but once again, we've got ways to raise that. So let's not be cheap on this. Let's invest in it and make sure the right people are put in the right place. And I agree, we keep those opportunities out of it. And we make sure it's about the industry and not about a couple of people doing more for themselves.
Thanks, Mark. And your comments about allied health are well noted. As you'd be aware, there's recently been the appointment for the first time of a Chief Allied Health Officer at the federal level, and I've had some conversations with her. And I guess that's what I was prefacing in my opening comments about. I believe that she would generally welcome some proactive approaches from us as an industry to push this along the line. And so your comments are very well noted. Cam.
Yeah, look, I agree with Fiona and Mark. I think the stages are to go and look at best practice from industries that are regulated. And I think there's a combination of looking at allied health professionals and what have they done and what have the pain points been and what have the successes been, and to talk to them at a senior regulatory level, but also to their members to understand that. And then also to look outside of our industry or our allied health professionals and seek out best practice, because there's a lot to be learned from other industries and not just to be too insular with our view with this. So that's the process I would take. I mean, I think for us to be recognised and be on a level playing field, so to speak, which Mark spoke to with regards to allied health professionals, we as an industry have got a lot of work to do. And that's just the reality of it. And I think as long as we know that and we don't shy away from it, there's an enormous amount of work to do. And that is because under this umbrella of fitness, there's just so many different business models and service offerings, etc., that there's a mountain of work to do to be recognised. I know a lot of people in the medical field and they are reluctant to refer to a personal trainer. For good or bad, because of the lack of regulation, the uncertainty that of what that qualification actually means, and that's not to say that there's rogue or poor physios out there in the world as well. So I think seeking out best practice from people within our sector, if we want to call that the healthcare sector, but also outside of it, and then understanding that. I think Fiona talked about this earlier, that there's just lots of levels in our industry. And I see this as a really great opportunity. We've all seen that it's really hard to have a career in fitness. There's no real stepping stones, or there's no real pathway to continually develop and grow up the chain. We lose so many good people to the industry. And I think that's got to be a consideration. Traineeships, all these sorts of things are potential options that other industries do really, really well. And you've asked the question about mandatory. Absolutely, it needs to be mandatory. I spoke to some of the people at Fitness Australia recently, Barrie, and it was around I asked the question when we were implementing, COVID-19 policies and Fitness Australia's policies and procedures around returning to gym openings in different states. What would happen if someone steps outside of the bounds of those? And the response that came back was that, well, if they're Fitness Australia registered, we can deregister them. And so the people who are trying to do the right thing or investing and wanting to be regulated potentially are the ones at the moment that are at the highest risk of being regulated and maybe being told you've got to shut your business down because you're not following the procedures and guidelines recommended. But old Joe down the road who's not a member of Fitness Australia is just getting away with it because Fitness Australia don't have the powers to do anything. So I think I wouldn't put a time frame on it. Not to say that there shouldn't be. I think it's a really big job. The fact that maybe South Africa, we're hearing, is the only country in the world thus far to get this in place would be indicative of the fact that it's a big, big task. But I think one that's absolutely needed for the industry.
Thanks, Cam. Tony.
I agree 100%. I think the most important thing is, as Fiona said, it can't be a group of volunteers because very quickly it's going to fall away and no one's going to pick up the pieces when they're fallen. So it needs to be someone that's prepared to sit down, whatever company it is or body it's going to be, they get paid and they see it through from A to Z. And whatever time frame that is the time frame that it is. Obviously, they're going to gain the support of key people in the industry. I mean, from my own personal perspective, what I'd really, really like to see is I want to support these young trainers that are coming out of the courses because, the issue that I have as a business owner is HR, is employing the right trainers. You invest all your time and effort, you mentor these people, and then all of a sudden they want to open up down the road because they believe that they're going to do it better. So, Cam mentioned this. I mean, if there should be an apprenticeship or a traineeship, so they should finish their qualifications, become a Cert 4, and then there should be a period where, and this is my opinion, where they can't operate their own business just yet until they work for someone for a period of time. Just like if you're a tradie, you can't just go off once you finish and, you know, start up your own plumbing business or electrical business. You've got to finish that 4 years apprenticeship first, and you're learning all the steps from business to best practice, and you're abiding by the rules so that you can keep the people that you're doing work for safe. Because we are so lucky as an industry that, you know, in all the years that I've been in, I've really heard, and knock on wood, no one's been sued yet, you know, and it's only going to be a matter of time that someone's going to sue someone in the industry and the cards are going to come crashing down. So we need that regulation. We need the trainers and the people that work in the industry to abide by the rules and take pride in what they're doing and say, you know what, I'm going to do the right thing. You know, when we were told that we were supposed to have marshals in our facility, I was the first one that got my marshal high-vis vest on, and then I was told I don't need to wear it, but I wore it anyway. And you know what my client said to me? They said, you know what, Tony, I'm so proud of you. You look like, you know, you should be carrying a lollipop and standing at the school crossing, and you should be, you know, at the airport with your things, and you should be, you know, and I got, you know, paid out left, right, and center. But I had other people that said to me, I'm so proud of you that you take this thing seriously. Because I've been down the road to other gyms and so on that they couldn't care less. And you know what? I don't care that more people are going there, but I'm doing the right thing for me, for my members, for my staff, and for my business. And if we take pride in what we're doing, the time frames, how we do it, I'm not fussed about how it's done. I just want it done. That's it. I'm sick and tired of going on, and we're just going around in circles. It needs to be done, and I think now's the opportunity to do it.
Okay, so
you've got the timer on me.
So
You're doing so well.
I'm going to throw you in a minute for last. I'm going to throw you to a minute for last comments, and I'd like you in your last comments just to perhaps reflect on this question. If Fitness Australia doesn't take the mantle here and run with it, whether we end up being the regulator or not is not the question. But if Fitness Australia doesn't take this mantle up and pursue this until it's end one way or the other, who else will? Fiona.
I don't know of anyone that would take this on, to be honest. And I think that's why it's so topical, because when one person takes or one organisation takes a lead in something, other people can feel left behind. But it's really not about that. It's about gathering this evidence and then making the decisions that's right for our sector.
And any other last comments you want to make before we wrap this up?
Evidence-based, empathy and respect.
Okay. Cam, same question.
Look, Barrie, if Fitness Australia don't do it, I don't have an answer for that one. Hopefully you do want to take it on. I think you've got a huge amount of support, and I think the COVID period has really garnered the industry, to be really honest. I think there's a real cohesion at the moment and a real want to head down this path. And we are, as I know a lot of other businesses are, extremely grateful of the work that Fitness Australia have been doing in the background. So hopefully it is you guys. I guess my last comment and my only thought on this is that, you know, I just as a professional can't understand why anyone who's maybe listening to this or wants to join the industry would not want to be held to account to fulfill our obligations as a fitness and health professional to provide best practice to our members, our clients, the general population. If we want to be taken seriously, there needs to be a level of accountability. It's as simple as that. And I'm not sure why anyone would not want to have that as part of a mandate in our industry, that we should be held to account and we should be regulated.
Thanks, Cam. Mark, final observations and the question I posed?
Yeah, look, I can't see any other body that's positioned to take this on apart from Fitness Australia. You know, from the days that we amalgamated the Fitness Queensland and New South Wales, and we brought this to Fitness Australia many years ago, I remember being involved in that. But the resource content that we've got dating back that many years that we can rely on to show us how the industry's travelling, that'll help us develop this, I think is you can't replace that. So for me, there is no other government body. It needs to work closely with the government. Last point I'll make is that, this industry needs to change because, I've been involved in sport at fairly high levels for a lot of years. And I never hear of anybody ask for the cheapest physio or the cheapest knee-op or the cheapest doctor. But God, all they ever hear is, what's the cheapest gym or fitness facility? And really sick of that is because we don't get the recognition and the respect. So let's get that through regulation.
Thanks, Mark. Tony.
Oh, mate, I don't know why Fitness Australia wouldn't want to do it. I can't see anyone else that would do it. And if they don't do it, we're stuffed. And I don't mean to say that out of disrespect. I just think that if Fitness Australia are going to support all its members and they're going to align with allied health and other industries as well, they're the only choice. I can't see anyone else that's going to do it or do it as well. So from me, it has to be you guys, and you just need the support. That's the bottom line. No point saying, all right, you guys go and do it, and everyone else just sits back in the back seat of the bus and doesn't help out. We all got to get together and we all got to help out and get this thing rolling.
Okay, so just again to recap what the process moving forward now is, Professor Patrick Kaiser, who led the focus group a week ago, has been watching this as well. He will take the comments from our panellists and also the comments that have come in on the chat line, reflect those through the comments that came through the private focus group. He will then create a survey, a questionnaire, which will be based again on a university research protocols. So it will be hopefully evidence-based, Fiona, from your point of view. And that will be circulated throughout our membership base and other areas as well over probably a month or so period. And we'll then start, when we get the findings from that, we'll then start the consultation period at more length with our members. I'm really hoping that we can get travelling again soon, because I think face-to-face meetings and getting that anecdotal stuff is actually of more value than doing this particular way of doing it, but fingers crossed on that. I'd really love to thank Fiona, Cam, Mark and Tony. You've obviously got a lot of passion here. We're gonna need your passion, guys, and a lot more like you to drive this through, because it is not going to be an easy task. And okay, South Africa has gone down the path, and I'll do a bit of research on that. Thanks, Mark. But this is not something that can be done by one person, one association. Just to reflect the views that have come through today, this has to be reflective of the whole industry. And any lead that Fitness Australia takes will be guided and influenced by you as members and potential members, I might add as well. So thanks again for your time, guys. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate your honesty, your candour. It's been, for me, I guess, reassuring, and it gives me more positivity and hope for the future, and that's really good. Have a lovely weekend, and we'll speak to you again soon.